Patek on today's unboxing. And more Patek. And who better to bring along but Adrian? I'm an AP guy, he's a Patek guy. So obviously Adrian was the right choice for this unboxing. And I'm gonna start off with a lot of brown boxes, guys. So we're gonna move through these. We're gonna talk about a little bit about market, a little bit about why you feel 2024 is the year of Patek Philippe, and talk about some watches. And what better way to start than a 5980 in stainless steel blue dial.
So before I start, I must make a statement that every year is the year of Patek Philippe. And the reason I picked 2024 is because we're seeing some stability in the market. Therefore, we have a lot of clients that would like to consolidate some of their collections of stuff that they no longer wear into stuff like Patek Philippe, which usually garners a higher price. Starting out with the 5980, a watch that's been a fan favorite since pretty much its inception many years ago. It is, in my opinion, the perfect wristwatch, especially from a sports standpoint. It's got a chronograph, it's very legible, and just aesthetically perfect.
Me personally, on a 5980, if you look at the evolution of the Nautilus, going all the way back to 1976, since the 3700, we haven't really seen a lot of big moves in terms of adding complications or adding functionality to the watches. Yeah, you got the 3710 that had the little tiny power reserve, which was barely visible, right? Then the first big change was the 3712, and then which literally right away turned into a 5712 because they only did it for like 6-9 months. And I felt that the 5980 for me is the quintessential Nautilus with other complications.
Correct.
One that's not plain, and actually white dial.
White dial.
I love that with the white dial.
I'm kind of agreeing with you, and they say that the least amount produced was in the gray, or otherwise known as the black dial. Here we have a blue dial, which seems to be the most popular overall, because as we know, blue dials are the most in demand.
And you know what? Funny enough, this is one watch that I feel like the blue is not that significant. Like it's almost, you know what I mean? Like it's not like a blue royal oak where it's like blue here between the fact.
It's a grayish blue.
It's like a grayish blue. It's a bit Vignere, I guess, as you can call it.
But that's Patek Philippe blue for you. I mean, 5711, 5712, they all share the same thing. It wasn't really up until the 5982 tone where they made that royal blue dial.
Well, we're gonna make a hell of a jump right now, and we're gonna jump from, a sports collection to their Grand Complication collection. And what better representation? I think the quintessential representation of their Grand Complication collection is going to be their Perpetual Chronos. And in this case, we have the 5270 R, which is the rose gold version. And would you say one of the most undervalued Pateks out there?
Absolutely. And this is something that me and Roman have been talking about. Here you have a Patek Philippe professional calendar chronograph, which trades at a rate of something that's seemingly much less complicated, and even from the same brand. So from a perspective of a client or a collector to pick up, I think it's a wonderful buy, especially considering the fact that out of the store, it's damn near $200,000.
Yeah, with taxes and all, it retails like 180 change and then plus tax, so you're paying 200 grand.
Yep.
I mean, look, there's quite a few undervalued Patek, and for years, I could never fathom just how powerful trends and influence is, right? If the Patek to own, like, if you ask 100 guys out there that consistently follow social media accounts like ours or the likes of ours, and you put a 5980 rose gold in front of them versus a 5270, speaking of which, here's a 5980 on a strap, right?
Obviously very comparable.
What does it sell for?
So it's due to the fact that got discontinued in 2024. If there are examples out there, and there are, I actually recently sold one, you're going to be looking to pay upwards of $135,000 for a 2024 brand new. Now this watch has been out for 10 years, so there's a price range there.
And this is?
And this is going to be under $150,000. Now the funny thing is this watch is 80-something thousand at retail, and this watch is
180-something thousand at
exactly.
retail. But if you ask 9 out of 10 people that maybe don't dive that deep into horology but are into watches, they'll pick this over this anytime, and it boggles my mind because here it's just a chronograph. Again, I say take that with a grain of salt because a chronograph is one of the most complicated complications to execute out there. I mean, Patek Philippe didn't come up with their in-house chronograph until way late into their career when they replaced the 5070 with the 5170. And so this 5270 incorporates the chronograph as well as it incorporates a full-blown perpetual calendar. This is 10x the watch that is, and yet prices are very similar.
One of the things that I can't wait for, because obviously we know the lineage going back to the 1518s to the 2499s to the 3970, 5970, now the latest being the 5270. I think Patek Philippe is due for a change, and I'm excited to see if they come out with a new perpetual calendar chrono and what that's going to look like.
I think that one is going to be a banger. And personally,
imagine they do it in stainless steel.
Imagine they do it in a Nautilus.
Well, they have a 5740.
Right, but that's just a perpetual.
It's not a chrono,
perpetual
right?
chrono, right? Yeah. But
Yeah,
look,
right.
bottom line is that I personally, as you said, 2024, Patek Philippe has come in a lot stronger because the prices obviously have come down to levels where some clients may deem reasonable. I also feel like we're going into a year that, you know, as the hype years are sort of behind us, I mean, where the hype level was at its peak and prices were ridiculous, I think the flex of horology is essentially going to make its way back. So people are going to start looking at things like this, and we may get a repeat of 2005, 6, 7, leading up to the 08 crisis, where back then Nautilus were just whatever. They're just a cheap Patek, right? I mean, you could buy an Aquanaut for like 10 grand.
The way I like to think about it is what used to be the appetizer has now become the main course.
Well, speaking of the Aquanaut, here's a 5167. I mean, these Aquanauts back in the day used to be able to buy under $10,000. Well, maybe the previous version, the 5067 at the time. But now, what's the fate of the Aquanaut in steel?
The Aquanaut in steel is going to be the same fate as the Nautilus. And what that is just continuous big demand for the product, because, you know, this is one of the things that me and Roman talk about when we compare Patek and AP and Patek. And one of the things that I always say is that one of the things Patek does better than AP, because AP is so Royal Oak centered and focused, that's primarily what they're going to sell. Where from the Patek Philippe side of things, it's damn near impossible to get a Nautilus or Aquanaut at retail.
But let me ask you a question. Or not. Forget the interruption for a second. But let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Name me, outside of the Grand comps from Patek Philippe, a dress Patek that sells over list.
Any new one that comes on the market.
At first, and then it slowly trickles its way down.
Again, but it's just one of those things where moving forward, I don't know if you're going to see that with code 1159s. Minus one star wheel from their code line, for example. Right?
The Perpetual originally did really well.
Which one?
With the Perpetual.
The Venturine?
The Venturine dial.
Right, but that's really about it. Patek Philippe's, you know, I remember when what was the 5224 came out last year. That really wasn't a big fan favorite. I sold them all over retail, and now they're kind of nearing the retail.
They also came out at like peak.
Not really. What do you mean? They just recently came out. Actually, on the other side of the hill, I would say.
I thought they came out right at the peak. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about a ladies' annual calendar, diamond bezel. You know, and ladies' complicated pieces from Patek Philippe tend to get overlooked. Now, no offense to ladies out there, but aesthetics becomes more of a priority when it comes to ladies when they purchase watches. Complications become second, and in a case like this, I think you get both. You get the complication and you get the aesthetics because, and again, this is below list.
Yep.
You know, because historically ladies' pieces don't resell as well as men's pieces, obviously, but you do certainly. What is this trading for?
Generally speaking, when it comes to ladies' pieces, especially 4948G, that's going to be somewhere around the $40,000 mark. Now, it's more of something that's going to be worn out. It's going to be something that's going to be matched to a bag. It's going to be something where they're going to have to really dress up. It's going to be a compliment. It's going to be more of a piece of jewelry to whatever their style is, right? You're not going to see a lot of ladies wearing a dressy Patek Philippe on a leather strap on a daily. Now, you will see a man wearing a 5980 on a strap daily. Right, so you'll see that. So for women, they don't get as much wrist time out of their stuff, so it becomes more of like an accessory or a side piece.
Yeah, I mean, look, do you know the list on this?
The list on that at the time was somewhere in the high 70s, if I recall.
High 70s. Yeah. So they are pricey out of the gate, and rightfully so, because the minute any major brand slaps a little bit of diamonds in any case. And again, it's somewhat warranted because this is also an annual calendar. But aesthetically, that blue on that dial, that matching strap is absolutely gorgeous. But you're right in the fact that that's really not a daily. A ladies' Nautilus, even with a diamond bezel, could be a daily, but that definitely is not. I think next we have, looks like another Nautilus. And this is the one that's like, call this one like the in-between, either here or there, Nautilus in terms of popularity. It's the 5726.
Obviously,
right?
still very much in demand, but it's like it's very hard for somebody, like you have your 5726 guys and you have your 5712 guys, right? It's really about, from aesthetic standpoint.
And then the 5980 wins out over both of them.
Well, 5711.
See, I'm not putting 5711 in that same category simply because, you know, most of the Nautilus, all the Nautilus were pulled out so far that has a different complication on top. I don't know if we have a 5711 here, to be fair, but with that said, I actually really like the 5726 because of its symmetry. It's very reminiscent to the symmetry of the 5980,
yeah.
Right? So maybe it's my OCD kicking in. You look at a 5712, things are a little off centers. They're kind of all over the place on the dial. It's also a thicker watch. I do like the thickness of the chrono as well as the annual calendar, where the 5712 has a much thinner profile, much like a 5711. So there's a lot of pros to me. Again, the quintessential white gold Nautilus, if I had to pick one, it would be the 5726, and the 5980, I'd probably go with that blue dial.
Talking about stainless steel, not white gold.
Yeah, stainless steel.
Yeah, said white gold.
Huh?
You said white gold.
I just say white gold.
You did. It's okay.
Okay, listen, it's all right.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in front of a camera talking 24/7, especially.
So I know there's a 5712 in there, so let's bring that guy out.
There is,
pin
actually.
Pin it right next to the 5726, because this is always a
We do have a
contention.
5712 in here. There you go. Now, this is an actual unboxing. This is a fresh purchase that Agent just made from a single source, which rarely comes along that often when you're able to pick up all these Pateks at the same time.
So I was like a kid in a candy shop. These are my favorite type of journeys.
We all know you like brown boxes.
We call it treasure hunting over here.
Treasure hunting. So here's the 5712.
Yeah.
And look, mind you, discontinuation. No longer produced. No longer produced on a strap.
No longer produced.
So like a lot of these have been discontinued. So don't, oh my God, I must get them now because, they've been no longer making them. They've been discontinued. They made a lot of these. Let's be fair.
Over time, yeah.
Over time, they made a lot of these. So the 5712, this is the one where, from a visual perspective, it doesn't have that perfect symmetry like the 5980s or the 5726.
See, that's in your opinion, though.
But there's still something about the 5712.
I think, in my eyes, again, this is where beauty in the eyes of the beholder becomes very true, because there are people like Roman that actually make that statement that there's a little bit too much busyness in the dial and you don't like the aesthetics behind it. For me, it just works. Somehow, with everything going on that dial, just the way they engineered it all works exceptionally well for me. So when I look at a 5726, my eye doesn't have the same
Really?
New work.
I don't know. For me, it's always for me it's going to be 5980 first and foremost, and then it's a toss-up between 57. Maybe because this watch has a much slimmer profile, and it seems obviously visually it seems smaller than those, which it's not in diameter, but because it's because this is a slimmer watch, it always looks smaller than its counterpart, the 5980 or 5726, and maybe that's why the dial may seem a little bit busier to me, because visually they're the same size, but again, the thinner the watch, the smaller it looks.
5712 always comes back to the point. Hey, you know what? I can slip it under a cuff. Hey, I can wear it with a hoodie. Hey, I can wear it here, and it wears super flush against the skin, and it's very, very comfortable. In fact, why don't we put the 5712 near the 5726?
I'm going to give you one more, which I think is extremely, extremely undervalued, and not just in Patek Philippe, but also.
It's a blast from the past.
No.
Yeah.
This is a world time, I believe, because the sticker said. Did it? Oh yeah, 5130.
Yes.
So the 5130 world time. Now, world time complication, as a general rule of thumb, is undervalued across every single brand. And for the life of me, 20 years plus in the business, I still don't understand.
How many brands regularly produce world timers today?
Quite a few.
Vacheron does, Girard-Perregaux does, Patek Philippe does. AP doesn't produce world timers. They don't do world timers. Richard Mille does not do world timers.
No, Richard Mille has a world timer.
Oh, yes, they do. 6302. That's right. Yes, they do.
Breguet has a world timer.
Yeah.
Blancpain has a world timer. Glashütte has a world timer. I mean, pretty much every brand has a world timer. And Longa.
Well, AP has the equation of time. That has
It's not a world timer. So look, pretty much every major brand at one time or the other has done a world time complication, and for some reason, it's the one watch. Look, it's not rocket science. Take a world time complication, throw it in the Nautilus. Ooh.
Nah.
Throw it in the Nautilus, throw it in the Royal Oak, and they will sell over retail. But most people Maybe it's because this particular world time system is a bit cumbersome, where you have to kind of turn the dial, figure out what time it is, and so on and so forth. Maybe that's why it hasn't hit as much. But for the most part, if you look at any world time watch, what's the retail on this? Do you remember?
World time 5130, I believe somewhere in the high 40s retail.
And what do they trade for?
They trade in the low to mid 30s.
Okay. So
Obviously, pending metal 5230 and rose seems to be the fan favorite. And again, I'm always going to come back to what I feel is nostalgic, and something that I mentioned before is that Patek Philippe, for me, every time I think of the brand, like you throw a brand out there and a certain watch pops up for Audemars Piguet, it's a Royal Oak. For me, Patek Philippe is going to be a world timer, because my father has a world time clock in his office, so it's unmistakably for me Patek Philippe. So every time I see a world timer, in fact, my favorite world timer on the market period is a 5231J.
Yeah, that dial is gorgeous.
You know what I mean? And it's got the
that
world
dial
timer.
Do you like the bracelet version, or do you like the strap version?
The bracelet version is 5131 platinum on a bracelet. You want to talk about undervalued watches? There's one for you.
5131P, 100%. Well, I'm going to continue based on the little sticky notes you put on here. I'm going to continue with undervalued watches, and this is a bit of a blast from the past, as you said earlier. I think you assumed that I was pulling out the 5960 now. The year was 05, 06, 07, again, leading up to that 08 crisis. Back then, horology was the flex, right? Anybody who was anybody, if they were buying an expensive watch, they were looking for tourbillons, perpetual calendars, minute repeaters, and things of that nature.
If a wardrobe malfunction on set.
With that said, 59, not this 5960, but a 5960 Platinum, the OG that they came out with, the annual chronograph combo, was probably one of the hottest selling watches alongside with the 5970s, right? The 5960 was sort of like the 59, for those that couldn't really afford the 5970, or the Celestial, which was above that, the 5102s. And they went with 5960 Platinum. It's a watch at the time that retailed in the 40s. And I think it went as high as, I think the highest was sold when it was double sealed, which back then was still a thing, was $85,000, right? I think is what it sold for at its highest. And then what ended up happening is the following. You had the crisis. Obviously, when these things were hot, they were producing them like hotcakes, and they made a ton of them. And today you find these platinum pieces in the mid to high 40s, which is a smoking deal. Obviously, in reference to its retail price, it's kind of back down to its retail price. You would think it's not a big deal, but guys, we're talking about almost 20 years going by, right? We're talking about 05, 06, 07. A lot of time has gone by. So what's the retail on the 5205?
Boy, it's 5905?
5905.
78,000.
Exactly. So if things were quote unquote normal, the 5960 Platinum should be trading at about 80,000, 90,000 right now, which would be its retail price as of today.
We want to talk about value retention. I don't think there's any better value retention across any brand as in what I like to call the golden years of Patek Philippe, and that would be in your early to mid 2000s, right? With all the complications that you said, 5970s are unattainable right now. Super in demand, super highly priced. 5960s, like we're mentioning right now, as well as 5070s. All those complications from those days have held exceptional value over time.
I guess you can call it that. And look, at the end of the day, you have to understand one simple thing is that you would think, oh my God, how so much time has gone by, and some of these things should be going up in time over value. Is that the one thing people tend to forget when it comes to watches is that it's still an accessory. There are still things like trends. There are still things like popularity. There are still things like aesthetics, right? Some watches, to most, will just look outdated. They want the latest, the greatest, the newest, right? It's like the difference between an RM1103 versus an RM11, the original one, right? It's still a Richard Mille. It's still a popular watch, but yet there's some guys, and I tell them, look, there's a big value right now in RM11s, and eventually those are the things that are going to become quote unquote vintage because the company's not that old. But yet the guy's like, no, because I'm already spending the money, and it's the flex culture that we're in today. I'd rather have the 1103 because now that's the latest and the greatest.
Well, it's also exceptionally much more expensive.
I think it's also the difference between collectors out there that just, no matter how rare, no matter how cool, will not put a vintage watch on their wrist because the flex factor is just not there.
At what point does a 5970 become vintage? How much more time needs to go?
I think the definition of vintage, and again, this is my own opinion.
Is there time?
I think 30 years is near vintage. Up to 30 years, anything above 30 years, I think 30 to 50 years is, or above.
We got a year.
Speaking of vintage,
we got a year for the vintage to come.
I got about a year and a half till I've officially become vintage, right?
About a half.
Well, I'm going to be 49 in May.
Yeah, so a year. In 2 months.
No, I'm going to be 49, not 50.
I know, I said a year and 2 months.
It's that close.
Yeah.
You know,
about a year and a half.
You know, when you get to my age, life becomes, somebody told me this once, life becomes like a roll of toilet paper. You know, the smaller the roll gets, the faster it rolls. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah,
time does go
that's what I'm getting.
fast.
But guys, I appreciate, we welcome all comments and all of this. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, I do want you guys to comment below in terms of these 3 beautiful steel Nautiluses that we have. Do we go with the 5712? Do we go with the 5726? Or do we go with the 5980? Quiet on set.
If you're new here, to hit a subscribe button. Put a lot of time and effort in making these videos. So, you know, hitting the subscribe button is the biggest way you can show appreciation.
Little one of these guys.
Yeah, hit that button as well, not this one, that one. I mean, if you don't like the content, go ahead and hit that one. But and also comment and share, because it helps YouTube's algorithm when you guys do all that stuff. Show it to other people that may enjoy this content, helps our channel grow. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one. Adrian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you guys soon.